Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started. I am Brian Kurth with Revere Software, and I'm thrilled to be presenting to you the promise of skills-based volunteerism with my friend and colleague, Krista Van Tassel from Common Impact. So we'll go ahead and make intros. I've already kind of introduced myself, Krista, but go ahead and if you would, make some quick introductions of yourself, if you would.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. I'm Krista Van Tassel. I'm Director of Partnerships at Common Impact, and we are an organization that supports skills-based volunteerism in our communities throughout the United States. I'm excited to be with you all today and to share a little bit more about our work in skills-based volunteerism, as well as some potential models that you can all consider as you think about this type of work in your organizations.
Excellent. Thank you, Krista. So the reason why I reached out to Krista is because we at Revere Software, I'm the founder, and a few years ago, we quite honestly got into skills-based volunteering, or you can use the term pro bono consulting. They're interchangeable, same vernacular, or different vernacular, but same meaning. And quite honestly, we got into it by accident. We were working within the higher education space and continue to do so as well, providing connections and programs, providing best practices and career advice between alumni and current students and the like. And then a prospective client came to us and said, hey, can you private label and create a program on your platform, on the Revere platform, for our skills-based volunteering program? And my reaction was, well, no problem private labeling. We do that all the time, but what is skills-based volunteering? This was 3 years ago, maybe 3.5. I had no idea what it was. And lo and behold, fast forward, it has changed our world. We've brought on a lot of different clients within the skills-based volunteering and pro bono consulting world, and it's very exciting. And here's what we've kind of discovered. And as I walk through this, I want to keep in mind as to why we partner with Common Impact, because oftentimes when prospective clients first come to us, they think they might be ready for the technology piece, when in reality, they're honestly not. And that's why we're starting to work with Common Impact, of saying, before you work with us, let's work with the folks at Common Impact as well and get a better understanding of the strategic side to everything. And so that's why Krista's on board here today and is going to provide a wealth of information about best practices, how to create a skills-based volunteering program, pro bono consulting program. But in essence, in the world of solving humanity's most pressing issues, we believe that people are the secret sauce. It's making those connections, right? Making those connections, doing a little bit of matchmaking, and the right person, the right expert for skills-based volunteering, pro bono consulting might be halfway around the world, but there's no way of you knowing that until you create a program that connects people across the world. And so that was a really big thing for us. And so what we've seen is that there's this abundant supply of subject matter experts. Honestly, when I first started in this 3.5, 4 years ago, I thought the inverse would be true. I thought we'd have a tough time working with our prospective clients to get enough volunteer employees to raise their hands. I was completely wrong. There is oftentimes an abundant supply. We've yet to have a client who doesn't have enough folks internally or externally through their channel partners and the like to raise their hands to say, yep, I want to be a subject matter expert. I want to volunteer my time. And in theory, there's an infinite demand, excuse me, of knowledge-seeking nonprofits, purpose-driven entrepreneurs, as well as higher education professors and students seeking out the expertise from subject matter experts. The problem lies in connecting the two and getting them to blend together. And so it ultimately is a win-win opportunity for everybody. And that's really where, the giving back feeling for the subject matter expert, they're doing it for a reason. Sure, it might be part of their job per se, but that's not the only reason. There's an intrinsic value, a feel-good factor to giving back as a subject matter expert. And so that's really critical. And likewise, the the rationale for having subject matter experts provide best practices and expertise for the nonprofit or the purpose-driven entrepreneur or the professor, teaching students about how to make social impact and the like, it's advancing the mission. And so it really is this win-win opportunity. And so I saw the light, so to speak, to quote Hank Williams some time back. And as we approached Common Impact some months ago, and it's just been really a wonderful experience so far to be working and meeting with the folks from Common Impact, because I think, as you're ready to hear, there's a wealth of information. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to Krista. But Krista, while you start, I'm going to stop sharing here and turn things to you. You've been around a while. Common Impact is not new. You guys have been around for 20 some years. You're the grandparents in the skills-based volunteering space. Maybe share a little bit more about that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Brian. So Common Impact was founded in 2000, and we have, as Brian mentioned, nearly 20 years of experience building skills-based volunteer programs. Our mission is really to create this connected economy by aligning business and social purpose. And we are proud of the work we've done to date. We've had over 700 cross-sector engagements, which means we've paired corporate volunteers with business skills to nonprofits in their communities that are in need of those skills to build capacity in their organization. And all told, those cross-sector engagements have yielded about 21 million in what we call social return on investment. So really helping make our communities better places, helping those nonprofits achieve their mission, and helping those volunteers feel more engaged at work and more engaged in their community. I will take a step back, and just as Brian had mentioned earlier, in thinking about his work and how skills-based volunteerism tied into Revere's platform, we've seen skills-based volunteerism become an important part of CSR programming as that model evolves in companies everywhere. So, when corporate social responsibility, or sometimes it's also referred to as ESG, environmental social governance aspects, when they first got started, it was in the 60s and 70s, and the idea there was really around legal and compliance, just do the least amount of harm. But as these programs evolved, particularly in the 80s and into the early 2000s, we started to see them evolve into recognizing a business value, and particularly around brand building and or reputation repair. You can probably recall some of the issues in the 80s or in the 90s that may have brought to light working conditions in factories, for example, or in factories abroad, or even some perhaps not wise investment choices that companies had made. And those sorts of brand repair, reputation building pieces of work came into the CSR space. But now we're really seeing this idea of business integration. So where corporate social responsibility or social impact of the work a company is doing in their communities, however broadly that could be defined, it could be their local community or it could be a global community or a combination of both, that really they're looking to integrate their impact into their core business or service offerings, and also really make that impact with their people, their most valuable philanthropic asset. This has led to growth in the pro bono consulting industry. So it's rapidly growing, but as Brian mentioned as well, to be successful, it really does need some support. And Common Impact is one of many organizations that could help in this regard. We have a little bit of research to share here. According to the CECP that publishes a Giving in Numbers report, pro bono or consulting or skills-based volunteering is one of the fastest growing domestic volunteer programs over the last 3 years. Over 50% of companies offer some sort of skills-based program. It has one of the highest participation rates among other corporate volunteerism programs, which is great news. However, it trails behind these programs in terms of perceived success. 28% of the companies considering these programs successful as part of their engagement. And so why is that? We realize that it can kind of sometimes be hard to track or measure that, but there's also, I think, that important part of finding the right programs and the right fits to make it successful. So given that on the corporate side, let's look at pro bono on the social side as well. So the social impact sector in the United States is about 1.5 million nonprofits, which is hard to believe. It's 10% of the national workforce and about 5.5% of our GDP. Here's the challenge. The average nonprofit, just due to the way they are funded, grant restrictions, or even just having a lean budget, is really only able to spend about 2 to 8% of their budget on infrastructure. And infrastructure here means anything sort of behind the scenes or not related to direct program or client services. So for example, investing in IT systems that might make the nonprofit run more efficiently, investing in communications or marketing, HR programming, or even financial modeling. These types of programs that could help the organization be stronger are what we put into that infrastructure budget. So the average nonprofit spends 2 to 8%. Their corporate peer spends 20 to 35%. So you can see where there's this gap in that investment and capacity building. And skills-based volunteering can be a way to address it. The value of a traditional hour as well, we talk about volunteering, and there are all different types of models. There's a direct service model, perhaps going to an organization and helping to beautify a park or clean up a classroom or build a home, serve a lunch. Those types of volunteer experiences are very important, and many nonprofits rely on volunteers for those. The value of that traditional direct service is about $25 an hour. On the pro bono side, though, if you are thinking about volunteering your skill set, your expertise, the value of a skilled volunteer hour is $150. So you can see where that investment can be leveraged as you're thinking about your programming and how you can best support nonprofits in your grant portfolio or in your community. And just to let you know too, this research on the infrastructure and the traditional volunteer hours, the infrastructure is our research, a common impact that we've pulled together, and the value of a traditional versus a skilled volunteer hour is something that we base on the independent sector's annual value of a volunteer hour. So, why get involved in skills-based volunteerism? Well, there are a number of reasons to, certainly. A few of the ones that have risen to the top in our work is around talent development. So, clearly you can use these experiences to create learning opportunities for your staff in addition to supporting the nonprofits. It can be an opportunity for recruitment and brand differentiation for your company. This is a tight labor market, and as you're looking at how you recruit, you should know that about 55% of millennials, the largest generation in the workforce right now, make their career decisions based on the CSR or pro-social work of their future employer. Now, while we're focusing here on millennials, and I know that that's an important market for many of us, I also want to point out that in our work at Common Impact, we don't see this as being a generation-specific desire. In fact, we have volunteers from across the generations in the workforce, Gen Z, Gen X, millennials, baby boomers. Across the spectrum, we see volunteers wanting to engage in this type of work and really feeling great about the impact they're making through pro bono consulting. And another reason to consider this for your organization is retention. So, not only is it a great way to recruit talent, but it's a great way to continue to keep your talent, your people really happy and engaged at work. We use the Net Promoter Score as a way to mark this, and we see that in companies that have skills-based volunteer programs, they have higher average Net Promoter Scores, or essentially recommending their company and their work to others. So if there's all this great news about why skills-based volunteerism is important and helpful for nonprofits and companies, why aren't more people doing it? Well, in our research, we found that there are a few barriers to successful skills-based volunteering. For companies, it is really a more complex engagement model. So having someone help guide you through that, particularly your first few times out, out the gate with this type of programming, can be really helpful. There's a struggle, as we saw with the CECP research, there's a struggle to really understand the return on investment and the longer term value of a skills-based engagement versus some of the really immediate direct outputs that you could calculate for direct service, hours served, etc. Sometimes there are limited resources to really implement these programs, particularly if they're being implemented through a CSR function, which can be sometimes looked at as a cost center at a company. And sometimes the interest and the desire to have these programs leads to too quick of an engagement, and perhaps a more thoughtful pilot program could be more successful in the community. On the nonprofit side, there are a few reasons why nonprofits are a little hesitant to participate in skills-based volunteerism. One is just they feel that they lack support or resources to, actually work through that project and maintain or implement whatever final product is delivered. One of the things that we have found in our work is that we want to identify the projects with nonprofits that are important, but not necessarily urgent. Those projects that are going to help that nonprofit at an inflection point really make a big difference in their operations and be able to provide more support to the community. But we also need that nonprofit to dedicate resources, staff, time to the skills-based volunteer project and engagement to make sure that it's successful. So sometimes for nonprofits that are already running on a very lean staff, that can be a hard proposition. Sometimes there's also a lack of understanding of the overall value, making that translation to how a new database might ultimately yield more better donor results. So making that connection for nonprofits. And a lack of understanding of that time commitment. This really relates up to the first bullet as well, but really wanting a nonprofit to be fully engaged in the program and invested in the work that the pro bono consulting team might be doing for them. So one of the things that we find is sort of the magic of skills-based volunteering is this concept we call the knitting factor. So when skills-based volunteering is done well, it really knits together expertise from the corporate and the nonprofit sector, even the public sector in some cases, to create sustainable solutions that don't come undone when partners part ways. And we see this happening through three big concepts here. This idea of a panoramic perspective, which is really providing this higher level perspective for the volunteer as well as the nonprofit. When you engage a volunteer in this work, they are able to see the mission, the services that a nonprofit partner provides much differently, because they're sort of, having a peek in the, behind the scenes of the operations of that nonprofit, and really being able to appreciate the work that they're doing and how they're doing that with lean resources. But it also helps them bring that perspective back to their organization and really advocate on behalf of that nonprofit and their mission area. We also see a great deal of promise in skill sharing. This work is not a one-way transfer of knowledge. It's not about a nonprofit partner sort of receiving the services, the expertise of corporate volunteers without being able to inform the volunteers' work. It's really a two-way exchange. And we find that in these programs, both parties walk away feeling enriched with the knowledge that they've been able to share and what they've gained from that experience. And then finally, having this idea of a sticky relationship. So even if your organization perhaps works with a nonprofit for one skills-based volunteer engagement, the volunteers that are involved may very often stay connected to that nonprofit as continued volunteers, whether it be with direct service or perhaps continuing to invest their their skills with a nonprofit. They may join as board members. They may be advocates for their cause in the community. Any number of those types of sort of prolonged relationships can occur when you have this skills-based volunteer engagement. So let's talk about a few of the models, because I think when we say skills-based volunteering, you know, for some folks that means a particular project or maybe a day of service type model. But there are a number of different models that we would love to share and that we see sort of come up in our work. So there's 5 here that we'll walk through. There's a day of service, team or peer-to-peer consulting, board service, coaching, and sabbaticals are all part of the skills-based volunteer program portfolio. So let's start with a day of service. For many organizations, this is one of the programs that fits most easily with your existing programming, because very often you may be doing some direct service, day of service events. So a day of skilled service is really structured either one of 2 ways. It's a flash consulting event structured as either a challenge consulting where employee teams of between 8 to 10 employees are matched to a nonprofit challenge, and they are together building a solution in that day. Or it could be a pitch competition where maybe one nonprofit is coming in to meet with multiple teams, sharing their problem and having those teams develop their individual solutions and then pitching them to the nonprofit at the end of the day. There are benefits to both of these models, and it really depends on what would work in your corporate culture or with your nonprofit partner to have you lean one way or the other. But that's what a day of service is, really, this flash consulting. The benefits to this is that it allows you to really engage a large volume of employees in nonprofits. There's a lower time commitment, and it often very much, you know, it fits sort of the model of volunteerism in a lot of our corporate partners. It allows you to provide an additional benefit to one of your grant partners or engage with a new grant partner in an issue area that you care about. Oh, and it also can be tailored to reinforce some of your programming around perhaps particular employee groups. So women leaders or global employees. You can structure these days to really engage those specific target audiences in your organization if you'd like. A second model here is called team consulting. And with team consulting, we look at this as, or it can also be peer-to-peer, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. We look at this as a longer term engagement. So it takes anywhere from 6 weeks to 6 months. You have, you know, most likely a functional or cross-functional team that would identify a nonprofit challenge, and you would build time in an employee's workday to help them support this work. So, you know, 3 to 5 hours a week. It could be something that you're sort of having that employee do as they find time, or even making it very structured where, you know, perhaps the team is meeting once a week on a Friday afternoon and creating this solution together. It can cut across any of the different business functions, you know, finance, operations, technology. And the benefits here is that it really is one of the strongest ways to build functional leadership skill development. So the program is something that you are tying to your employee talent development goals. You might want to consider a team consulting project. Again, it integrates well with talent or rotational programming. We do have some clients that like to use this team consulting model as part of their overall programming for talent and leadership development. And it gives you the opportunity to really create a very deep investment in your nonprofit partners. Another model here that I'll just go over kind of briefly is coaching. And so this can be an opportunity for you to engage perhaps your executives or specific leaders in your organization. It can be direct coaching, you know, it can be a team coaching opportunity. So having a sort of a one-to-many or a one-to-one type model. And the benefits of this are that it really does provide some great ways to freshen skills, soft skill development for your employees at a senior or mid-level. It gets to expose your employees to levels of leadership within the nonprofit as well as within your own organization. So sometimes that exposure of more junior employees to senior leadership at the organization can be a great benefit of skills-based volunteerism. It has the potential for very strong impact on a nonprofit partner, particularly around relationship building. And it can often be used as a lead-in to perhaps a stronger, longer-term engagement, such as board service. A sabbatical is another way to think about skills-based volunteerism. Some organizations offer these sabbaticals after 3 or 5 years of service, and it can be structured to offer a team member an opportunity to really deeply engage with a nonprofit of their choice, or even a nonprofit that the organization works with and would benefit from skills-based volunteerism. Again, you can use this type of sabbatical programming as something that in your recruitment, your retention work. It can be structured or unstructured, allowing employees to maybe choose their own adventure or design their own program, or more structured if it is something that you wish to tie into your community and employee engagement goals. And it can be integrated, again, to your talent development program. The benefits here are, again, that deep investment in social change, the leadership development, and this type of programming truly is a CSR differentiator. That it's an employee benefit differentiator for organizations that offer this. The final type of skills-based volunteering service that I'll cover here is board service, which I think a lot of us are pretty familiar with. Some of us, organizations may offer board training or board matching. So board service is really connecting your employees to board opportunities, and it can be corporate driven or employee driven. Corporate driven meaning you may have a portfolio of grant partners that are tied to your organizational social impact goals, and you may wish to help support those organizations through board service. And if that's something the organization is interested in as well, that can be a great opportunity to really make those matches and deepen the relationship. It could also be employee driven, where your board service program or training can help empower an employee to find a board on their own, or even take that next step with a nonprofit that they're already engaged in and join the board. The benefits here are that it really helps demonstrate a very strong commitment particularly in issue areas. If your organization is committed to particular community challenges, for example, maybe around STEM education or empowerment of girls or economic development, this can be a way to really, gain deep experience and deep impact through board service. It's certainly an experience builder for senior leaders. As you think about the knowledge and the way these leaders are sort of navigating their own professional development in the firm, board service is a great way to broaden their perspective and bring in a new, fresh thinking for them around these problems. And it is really a strategic investment of your time and your resources in a nonprofit. I want to transition here to share a little bit about a new tool that at Common Impact we've launched with a consortium of our partners in this skills-based volunteering space. Our partners include folks like Pixar Global, Taproot Plus, United Way, the Campaign for Black Male Achievement. All of these organizations helped us develop this tool called Capacity Commons. And the idea of Capacity Commons is that if you are a nonprofit that is interested in pursuing skills-based volunteerism, but you are lacking that corporate partner connection or the opportunity to engage with an organization like Common Impact to help build that connection and source those projects for you, you could use Capacity Commons to help you along the way. So Capacity Commons provides organizations with education about skills-based volunteerism, tools and tips. There are a number of amazing resources on this site that can help you do everything from taking a quiz to assess your organization's readiness, finding the right project that would be the most impactful and important for your organization at that point in time, scoping that project so that it does really meet the expectations of a volunteer and your organization's leadership. And then also evaluating the success of that program. We have on this site a number of peer examples. So if the tools and tips and templates don't get you there, the peer examples may spark ideas and jumpstart your project as well. And we also have the ability to help you connect with those volunteers. So if you are in an area that maybe you don't have a corporate partnership, or you are looking to find individual volunteers versus a team, the Capacity Commons platform can help you find those via our referral partners, as well as some online matching platforms like Taproot Plus and LinkedIn. So with that, I'm just going to share some examples. So, we talked a little bit earlier about team projects or peer-to-peer. The Capacity Commons site would really be something that I think works best for a peer-to-peer interaction. But team projects might be something that you think about working with an intermediary like Common Impact to support. And team projects really engage a group of cross-functional experts, volunteers to support across a variety of needs. And peer-to-peer, when we talk about those, is more an individual who is able to give of their time and talent to support capacity building work with their nonprofit partner. And those individual experiences may also include the coaching, sabbatical, or board service work that we talked about previously. So with that, I'm just going to share one example of pro bono in action as a team project before I pass it back over to Brian. So one of our clients is Fidelity Investments, and they had an idea to really target their emerging talent, their up-and-coming leadership in their organization, and doing this through an experiential leadership or learning opportunity of skills-based volunteerism. They structured the program with cross-functional teams. So they wanted it to be a mix of functional expertise to kind of reinforce learning across the organization, and also to provide exposure to these team members that may be coming from different functions to others in the organization. And that's one of the benefits of a skills-based volunteer engagement, is it really does help deepen those connections within your employee groups as well. They have an executive champion for their project, which is a great way to provide not only that coaching for the team, but also that exposure to leadership. And the way they had this longer term consulting project set up was within 4 months and about 10 hours a week. So, you can really flex that based on the workload and the structure at your company, but 4 months and 10 hours a week is what worked for Fidelity. And in the end, what they ended up doing was really looking at a challenge, a strategic and business development challenge that could utilize that cross-functional team. And they were matching those senior level nonprofit executives, not only with their teams at the company, but also were able to find some placements for their board of directors as well. And that was in addition to the deliverable that they gave their nonprofits, which would have been, dependent on the nonprofit, but really a key strategy, great next steps on a key program, or even identifying key technologies that nonprofit would need to further their mission. And so that's just one example of how Fidelity does this work. There are many others, and I would love to turn it back over to you, Brian, so you could share some of the work that Revere has done with your clients as well.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Krista. That great information. And let me go ahead and share here. And hold on one second. Oops, I apologize. I should have been down the way here. We'll just go through this. In fact, here, let me do this. We'll just jump ahead. There we go. So the review, you may be wondering right now, after all this great information from Krista, as to where do we start? And if you're just looking at a skills-based volunteering program, if you're a corporate foundation, or you might be on the flip side, if you are the nonprofit and you're looking to engage in a skills-based volunteering program of someone else's, whether it's a corporation's or as Krista mentioned, someone like they're really not competitors, are friendly cooperators at Taproot. We're in a space where we all are working together. And so just to kind of clarify, where you go, depending upon who you are and what your goals are. If you're looking for strategy and you're just wanting to better understand how to create a program, how do you engage if you are a nonprofit with an existing program, definitely reach out to Common Impact. They are the folks who are, well, as Krista mentioned, they've been around since 2000. They've been at it longer than anybody. So they are the experts when it comes to this. From a technology perspective, if you are a nonprofit and you're looking for some quick advice, from a specific individual, you might want to reach out to Common Impact, or vis-a-vis, you may want to reach out to our friends at Taproot, because they have a set of individuals who are open to providing skills-based volunteering. However, if you are a corporation or an NGO and you are looking to connect your volunteer expert employees in a private labeled branded environment, then we'd love to chat with you. We're Revere. We are a peer-to-peer platform connecting subject matter expert volunteer employees of a corporation on the most part. Sometimes, again, it can be a large NGO, large nonprofit, with their community members, with their grantees, with their nonprofit grantees, purpose-driven entrepreneurs, anyone who's getting more than likely some not only great advice and expertise, but oftentimes they may be getting licensing fees waived, especially if it's like a technology company. So those are some of the types of folks that we work with. So we're linking, on the most part, like I say, corporate social responsibility initiatives, departments, and corporate foundations with their grantees across the world. And just sort of going through this in terms of describing, excuse me, what it is we do. We've already talked about some of this, but it's just amazing to see the actual social impact that these folks are making. These employees are making a social impact across the world. And it can be, as Krista mentioned earlier, it's hard to put a value on the social return on investment, but that's what we're now doing. So if you are working for a corporation and you're saying, oh, that sounds great, Brian, but our CFO isn't going to go for this, I'm here to tell you, yes, they can. And here's how, because we're able to track all that engagement. And so you're able to go back with real data, and data is what it's all about for your CFOs out there. And so this is really important data that confirms that there is real investment being made in the social impact environment. And that's powerful stuff. So just really quickly, I'm going to just 1 second of, okay, maybe a minute of some sales bit here. The fact that we're really expanding. So going beyond our peer-to-peer environment of connecting the subject matter expert volunteer employees with grantees across the world, we're already acting as a source of people. So we literally say, you have the people, we have the platform. So to populate projects, so team projects. So we are now starting to list grantee projects, team projects out on our site. We already have one beta client who's doing that. It's Autodesk, which is going extremely well. So we're still not going to be actually managing the projects. That's where you want to go to Common Impact. So again, you may be thinking, oh my gosh, this is a really confusing space. It's not. We're a technology platform, so we're here to help you make those connections. But when it comes to time to actually project manage, we're tech agnostic. So we work with Common Impact. We work with our actual client, Asana, which is a project management platform. So we'll work with whomever you're using to actually project manage those team projects. Our folks will soon be able to, the volunteer employees will be able to raise their hands in interest of specific grantee projects, in addition to continuing to do their peer-to-peer requests that come in while we're all sleeping at night. Someone from Rwanda, a nonprofit in Rwanda, may be requesting time with one of our end user subject matter expert employees at Tableau, for instance. So all of that happens while we're asleep at night, which is awesome. And then likewise, our corporate clients will be able to assign specific volunteer employees to those grantee projects. So that's all coming. And what's really excited, I'm as a tech entrepreneur, I'm very excited. We are launching, deploying our API this fall. And so we'll be able to partner even more directly with folks like Common Impact and Taproot and Asana and Benevity and Bright Funds and Cyber Grants, all these folks that you might be working with already. We will be able to, in really technical terms here, push out our data and allow them to then accept that data, and then it automatically will sync and go into their platforms. And so whatever you may be using. So it's really quite exciting of where we're going. As Krista mentioned earlier, the skills-based volunteering arena is just growing, so quickly, and we're very thrilled to be on the forefront of it. Just showing you some of our clients. Excuse me, this is Twilio. You may wonder who's Twilio. Well, if you've ever received an airline confirmation, hotel confirmation via text, that's Twilio. They also bought SendGrid, based in Denver, which is email notifications. So they are providing their expertise to nonprofits around the world, which is just exciting as all can be in terms of really enhancing communications across the world. Autodesk is a client. Autodesk is one of the oldest software companies out there. If you're in architectural or engineering backgrounds, you're familiar with CAD, CAM and the like, that's Autodesk. They are doing phenomenal things. As I mentioned, they're both using us for peer-to-peer as well as assigning people to projects. And then they use Taproot for the project management side. So again, we're all friends in this space. So just want to clarify that to make certain that people understand that you can use several of us together at the same time. So Autodesk, I just love some of the things they're doing with some of their, not only their nonprofit grantees, but some of their purpose-driven entrepreneurs. There's an organization, a B Corp, that is building out prosthetics via 3D printers. I mean, it's amazing stuff that just wouldn't otherwise be happening. How are they getting the expertise? How is that B Corp getting the expertise? Through Autodesk Pro Bono Consulting. So amazing stuff. How it works, it's really simple. We make the connections. You contact an expert advisor. If you are a nonprofit or a purpose-driven entrepreneur, contact an advisor, pick a time, a date, prepare for your session, have your questions ready, and then you have your session. And then you're able to provide feedback as well as the nonprofit grantee or as the purpose-driven entrepreneur. It's really streamlined. In terms of what it all looks like, as you can see, it's very simple. You can request a session. This is Keisha Rose at Tableau. She's one of their stellar, they call their folks volunteers. As you can see at the top, find a volunteer. Everything is personalized. So the corporate client is able to personalize what they call their experts. Some call them volunteers, mentors, advisors, champions, pro bono consultants, whatever they want to call them. In this case, you can reach out to Keisha via phone or video conferencing. She doesn't quite have the time to meet in face-to-face, but for those folks who do, you can also, if you know that you're going to be in Seattle, there are plenty of folks at Tableau that can meet in person as well. So that is who we are, and I would just love to encourage everyone to, again, if you're at the early stage of thinking about creating a program, certainly reach out to us for a demo because it may take some time to make some decisions. But first and foremost, reach out to the folks at Common Impact because they're going to give you, as you heard, Krista's outline of what they've been providing since 2000. They are the experts of the experts. And so they're going to guide you in an agnostic way as to who might be the best fit as well. They're going to recommend different means of creating a program and suggest different folks who, as Krista mentioned earlier, might be Revere, could be Taproot, could be others. And Common Impact, as I mentioned earlier, does the project management side for team projects themselves. So, we'd love to partner with you, work with you. Krista, what more would you like to add at this point in terms of how to partner with us all?
Yes, thank you so much, Brian. So yeah, we absolutely would love to be able to talk with you about the programs you have, or even just if you want to seek some advice on ideas you're exploring and would like some feedback, we'd be happy to talk with you. And you can reach me at kvantassel@commonimpact.org. You could also, if that's too hard to remember, you could just do info@commonimpact.org, and that will find its way to me. And Brian, I'll turn it back to you.
And same for me. You're able to reach me at bkurth@getrevere.com. And if that's a little difficult to remember, info@getrevere.com works as well. Will get to me. And goes without saying that we would love to have conversations with you. And as you start thinking about 2020 and beyond, and as Krista mentioned earlier, skills-based volunteering, it's only the beginning. This is early stages for folks like us in the space. And so we are very excited. We look forward to working with you all. And if you do have any questions, if you would like a demo of anything, please reach out to us. And with that, thank you so much, everybody. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to hearing from you. Take care.